then of course last week I was chatting to Andy and I was saying, I haven't heard from Mary Lea. She lives in Pasadena. So I sent along an email. I'm so happy that you're okay and you're here and that we're able to help at all. I know from our experiences in 2017, what really helped so much was having a sense of normalcy, but having people also who could understand. And I think in a community that has gone through what we have gone through, we're in a unique position to understand how hard it is, and just that this is so shortly afterwards, and literally across the street and around the corner. When Andy was in earlier, he grew up in Pasadena, you guys were talking and it was street by street, and I thought about how up here we go, oh, Los Angeles, it's just big old city down there. It's not, it's like us, it's street by street, it's a small town, it's a small community. So as we were emailing, this is a time to celebrate both what was there and what will be there again, and what is there in the people. People help each other and people support each other, and we can do that from up here, and they're doing that for themselves down there. Mary Lee's going to celebrate that a lot more in her talk about Pasadena and so give her
That's really nice. Thank you. That's really nice, Rosie. Yeah. Wow. What a beautiful crowd. Thank you. You're beautiful, all of you. I know, and all of you had to drive probably to get here. None of you probably are across the street or around the corner. And before I get started, I'll report on how things are. First of all, I Googled today, what do you tell somebody who's survived a disaster? And the first thing was, I don't know what to say. and I love talking. I love words, and so I will say this, since AI didn't know what to say. Down in Altadena, people are taking each other in. They are feeding each other, and they are giving away their stuff to whoever needs it. So that points us in a good direction, because the rest of it is completely for us uncharted. I know, in fact, I have a friend who called or texted me and says, I've got PTSD up here for you guys down there, because I know you guys have been down this road like 3 or 4 times in various ways. So, there is that, but it's going to be I want to say it's going to be okay, because that's the only way I know how to think about it. But and just like on a slightly other note, usually when I go out talking, I try to wear something really cute, right? But today I have to wear this. Yay. I have to wear this. I pulled it out of the drawer and I said, yeah, I've got to wear this. And it's funny.
Isn't Altadena your hometown?
Yeah, I'm getting there. That's my husband. Yeah. And but besides writing this book,
Please use the microphone. Thank you.
Besides writing this book during the pandemic, another thing I did during the pandemic is I signed up for a master class. And I'd scroll through and take a class on cooking, and take a class on negotiating, and take a class on terrorist planning. I took all these classes, but the one that really stuck with me was the one on comedy from Steve Martin. And Steve Martin said, know what your brand is. Just know what your brand is, and that's what you have to be when you go out. You know, that's who people are going to expect you to be. And so I just want you to know that this is my brand. Right here. This is my brand. So indeed, I'm from Altadena, and even though I call myself a world traveler, I've never really lived further than 1 mile from where I was born. And so it's just, I began to really think about the pandemic, and I thought, my two previous books are world travel books, and I've been fortunate to be a lifelong traveler, even though I never left home. But when the pandemic came, I thought, I was a real bad lockdown person. All I wanted to do was go somewhere. And the only way I could clean my closet or do the stuff I had to do at home is to pretend I was packing to go on a trip. And I thought, well, if I can't actually go anywhere, at least I can travel my block. And I can see what's going on right under my own nose, so to speak. Even though I've lived on my block for 38 years, you don't always know what's going on. And I began to realize there's a story here. There's a story in my own neighborhood for somebody such as myself, where I've watched the cycles of life go through. And when we moved to that street so many years ago, everybody, I say our neighborhood, it's like during the 90s and late 80s, it's like every house in our neighborhood got a fresh coat of paint, got a new bathroom, got a new something. It just came back to life after one cycle of like all the old people. They kind of moved on, or people lost interest in that style of house, and it became like not appreciated. But when we moved into it, that cycle was changing. I kept thinking, there is a story here. There's a story here about the way people stood on the sidewalk and talked to each other about who their contractor was and what they were going to do, and so forth. And because I know people, I made it my business to know as many people as I could in my immediate surround. I knew the small things people had done in their lives to help build this place into a very cherished place to live, the neighborhood that I have. It wasn't particularly cherished before. There was like bars on the windows and that kind of thing. But I started talking to neighbors, and I had the advantage of having been there for a long time. And I started hearing all the small little things they had done, which I know have woven our community together. And as I did this through the pandemic, because I had the time to do it and everybody was at home, I began to realize, wow, it is weird. Somebody who wanted to get away from home so badly when I was in junior college, how I never really have left home. So I started to think about my childhood and my childhood neighborhood, of which my parents owned that house for 25 years. And I realized, wow, they're just a mile apart in distance, but 60 years apart in time. And so I began just to weave all of that together. And I wanted to tell this story about what community can mean and how important it is. And you all know when you have it, and you know when you don't have it. And I tell it through the relationships with neighbors and friends, and when I'm little, friends. But it's each chapter is like a conversation, and what I hope to bring into it is, like, without putting a dot on the I, what we can do for each other without even really going to a great deal of effort. It means like just sort of being awake to what is around you, because so with technology, and if you lived in a place a long time, you get a little bored with what's going on, so you don't pay attention. And I just thought maybe there's a way to help people just take stock in like the amenities that are right around them, the people that are right around them. So that's how the book came about. And I tell this little joke. I started to write when everybody stopped reading. So I'm not speaking to anyone in this room, but we all have all of our friends that haven't read a book in like a long time. So on purpose, I try to keep it bite-sized, digestible, and thought-provoking. and funny and something that you can mirror. You say, oh, I know what she's talking about. So, yeah. And so if you would like, I'd be very happy to read through a selection.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
yeah. And so certain chapters are the present, in my present neighborhood with present people, and then certain chapters are my childhood and going forward and thoughts and things like that. And I will tell you that the childhood street I grew up on, which is Santa Rosa, has it is Christmas Tree Lane. So maybe you've heard of Christmas Tree Lane. It has massive trees on both sides. And I will tell you that tree, for whatever, that street, for whatever reason, survived.
Yeah.
Some of the houses did not. My childhood house did. And it is just a strange sight to see this street that has massive trees on both sides and then so much burned all the way around it. Why those trees didn't burn, I'm just not quite sure, you know. So, although deodoras are amazing, they're cedars, and they actually come from the Himalayas, and deodora means tree of God. And the Tibetans used deodoras to build their temples and so forth.
Oh.
And so, maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know.
Sure.
Okay. So this sort of sets up the childhood portions of the book. In this chapter is the kids on the corner. My old friend and neighbor, Ben Yandel, used to say, a happy childhood was an inoculation against life's hardships. With 4 children already, my parents bought the big Georgian colonial on the corner of Mendocino and Santa Rosa in 1952, and then proceeded to have 5 more of us. When my grandfather died, Dad converted the garage into a cozy house for Ruthie, Mom's mother, so she'd be just a garden walk away. Ruthie worked until she was 82 selling newspaper ads, but she'd once been a bona fide silent movie star from 1914 to 1919. And even though it was 1960, in her mind, it could have been yesterday. To Ruthie's dying day, her nails were done, her bubble hairdo just so. She tried to never miss an afternoon at Santa Anita Racetrack. The friends of ours who spent their childhoods in and out of our house still tell stories about her. Everyone laughed at her driving. Well, she didn't learn until she was 59, and her hearing was horrible. Every time Mom got pregnant, Ruthie would cry out, "You're ruining your life with all those kids." But Mom knew when not to listen, like every evening, while she toiled away making dinner for 12, and Ruthie sat after she got home from the track, watching her daughter work, sipping her gimlet, and offering opinions on how rude drivers were, how god-awful hippies looked, and on the sky-high price of a good steak. Santa Rosa Avenue was just a mile long, with 80-foot deodora trees marching up and down both sides. Deodoras are giant Christmas trees with some limbs reaching out like the neck and back of horses. As children, we'd climb and sit on the horses' backs, watching the cars pass beneath, and by kicking the tree limb, we could get those horses to fly. Mm-hmm. To this day, the smell of cedar wood and the feel of that sticky bark still sends me up, and away. We did not have sidewalks, but we did have big river rock gutters that were 3 feet deep. All the driveways up and down the street had little cement bridges spanning these gutters, which created tunnels underneath. In summer, we'd scrabble around in them, daring one another. Jeff, who was 3 years older than me, would say, "Something's died in there, Mary Lee. Dare you to go see." Of course I would hesitate. "You want to read my comics?" You gotta crawl in there. The tunnels were dark, damp, and full of spiders. Danny, who was 2 years older than me, would toss in, "You're just a chicken. I think you're just a chicken." And then to show off, he'd recklessly crawl in there, calling the rest of us all just a bunch of babies. And it was always exciting when Ruthie ran her Corvair off the edge and into the gutter, causing her to scream for help. Dad and all the boys, often including a few neighbor boys, would run out yelling, "Ruthie's done it again!" And working together, they'd get her and the car out of the stone ditch. We had everything we could want in our neighborhood. An ice cream and candy counter 2 blocks away at Thrifty's, a pet store where I bought hamster supplies, access to a swimming pool, and streets full of kids our age. A few friends stand out after all these years. Maya and Eric, the twins down the block, Carl up the long driveway of the flag lot, the Vandecar kids who raised pigeons, Tommy Miller, my brother Danny's great friend, whose mom gave us carrot sticks on crushed ice. And mine, when I was 8, 9, and 10, my best friends were Susan and Barbara. The thing that stood out about being at their houses was that their mothers were so calm. Barbara's mother actually made the clothes for her Barbie. Susan's mother's kitchen was so clean they even had filtered water in a big glass dispenser. Every cookie I ate at her house came from a brand new unopened package, and the good kind, marshmallow on graham cracker dipped in chocolate. At our house, Mom would point at a bowl of apples and shout, "Take one and go outside." On hot summer days, if Mom went someplace, we'd take the opportunity to call the kids to hurry over. This was our chance to play water fight. And it went like this. Our friends would drag garden hoses from their yards to ours and would hook them up to all the numerous outdoor faucets. Then we'd break into teams and station ourselves in various parts of the yard. On the count of 3, we'd blast the hoses full force, chasing and attacking each other, screaming and yelling who could inflict the most sopping, soaking, dead-on assault on the others. And to win, the goal was to be the last one standing after everyone else was drowned out. So much running and laughing across the lawn, running across the patio, running up the back of the house, coming around the driveway. Our feet got so tough from going without shoes that we could run barefoot down the middle of the street even after it had been re-graveled. But oh, the instant Mom's rumbly eggplant purple Cadillac came around the corner, everybody'd cut off the water, grab their hoses, and nonchalantly slink for home. Our yard seemed to be the place for this kind of thing, even though everyone else had perfectly good yards.
Oh, sweet. That's great.
So that's kind of like the tone, but I go back and forth in time. And all of the things I did mention in there, not the house, not the trees, they survived, but all those other stores, every business up and down Lake Street is gone now. So, yeah. But I just want to say that in this day and age, when we take so much for granted, I think if you can pause a minute, I've heard so many wonderful things that responses people have had. One person said, I've been meaning to have my neighbors over for a cocktail for so long, and damn it, I read your book and I sent out an invitation. Or other people like those people who moved in, I kept thinking I should like say something to them, and I read your book and damn it, I did. And so even if if I never make it onto the New York Times bestseller list, those are big home runs for me.
Yeah.
And now, I don't want to go on because why, But, any questions, or let's have a conversation, or does anybody have a thought that they would like to just put forward? I'm all ears.
When did you start writing? I didn't realize you were a writer.
No worries.
How did you learn, have you always been writing? Or is this-
Well, you know, I'm a kind of a late bloomer, and my first book came out when I was 65, and it really was prompted by an existential crisis of like, well, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? When I was 60, many people, I would say particularly women, when their kids leave and they may retire, and perhaps your husband retires, things like that. And I did not know, and I have always written, you know, but I would say with varying degrees of success, like mostly not. But I busied myself with community and with rehabbing this old house and helping my husband in his businesses, but I was always writing, even if it was like soccer sign-up sheets, and I remember telling myself, well, at least if I'm not writing, at least I can write good emails. You know, I had to take it really small. But I would say I always had a great deal of creative energy and was always trying to manage creative projects. And so this just became the time in my life when I was able to manage it. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
How did you decide what stories made the book?
Well, you know, it was a huge mess of tangents, this book. And I have a friend, a friend, and she has been my editor on the other two books too. And we organized everything so that it would have a flow, that we wouldn't repeat ourselves, and that we'd try to hit a lot of different bases that would resonate with people. So that's what we did. We edited it to like the stack was this high, and then what made it in was this high. So, but it's a very conscious choice.
You have material for another book then.
I have a lot of outtakes. I definitely do. I definitely do. You know, one thing that's a lot of fun for people who are at my talks is if anybody has a particular neighbor from their childhood or even the present that did something, or you had an experience about them that always stayed in your mind, I would love to hear it. You know, for instance, one woman said, when I asked this question, she said, when we were kids, there was a huge avocado tree in our neighbor's backyard, and everybody played in this avocado tree. And what we would do is every kid had their own limb that they would have to guard, and they named them after all the planets from Star Trek. And that was their like domain that they had, and I thought
That's good.
that was really good.
Huh.
And I have a particular neighbor. Every year I've lived in this neighborhood, she, on my birthday, which I don't really appreciate anymore because I'm not, 38 anymore, she gets butcher paper. There's a huge sign across my house. Happy birthday, Mary Lea. It's like for 30 years. I thought, it's
Wow.
just her thing that she likes to do.
That's
Yeah. So does anybody have anything they want to put forward, and I'll put it in my memory bank? Yeah.
I just, I apologize for being late, but I was so excited to come here because one of my very best friends in the world lives in LA, and she's been quite, traumatized by what's going on. Luckily, she's okay, but she's devastated for her community. And her story seems so similar to yours, so I just bought your book, and I'm gonna mail it to her, because, she's having kind of a hard time. But when she moved to LA from New York City, and it took her so long to adjust, and she really struggled. And then during COVID, same thing. She just thought, well, I'm going to go out and just explore my world, and that is what began her love story with Los Angeles and her community. And so she's been reminiscing about things that she's done outdoors, you know, stairway walks or nearby hikes because nature's been so meaningful to her. So I'm just really excited about your book and the story, and I'm so excited to send it to her because I think
Oh,
it's
lovely.
just going to be beautiful for her to read.
Yeah.
That's great.
Very
Great,
nice,
great,
very nice.
great. Yeah. I have, for some of you who may not know this, I have 2 previous books, and they're backlist books, and they're available also if you want to, you know, if you want to be super fans. Anybody want to be a super fan? Yeah. So,
Good stories of
Yeah.
football.
Yeah, I'm curious when you went out and engaged with your neighbors more, if you found people who really didn't know how to be in a community, didn't know how to be in a neighborhood. I mean, that's my experience. I went to 6 elementary schools, so I had no training in being friends with people around me
that's right.
because I had to leave them all the time.
That's right. That's
So I'm
right.
curious if you ran
Yes.
into those people and what
Most
it was.
definitely, most definitely. And there's even a little piece where, like it almost starts the book out, when I ask certain neighbors how they find this neighborhood. And the little, the anecdote in the book is that in their previous neighborhood that they lived in, they never knew one neighbor, not one. And they moved here and it almost freaked them out because like people came over to welcome them and their first response is like, what do all these people want from us? You know, and then he realized, oh, this is what you do. And he says, I don't think I ever would have reciprocated if I hadn't had it happen to me. So people have to be kind of shown, right? And you all know the people in your neighborhood that never, you know, that never saw the way to do this. And for me, it was a funny time, COVID, right? We're all afraid of each other and you know, behind masks and afraid. But I started, if you have a purpose, things are a lot easier. It's a lot easier to call somebody when you have an idea, I want to talk to them, instead of just, how you doing? And so I commenced by texting or just calling the old-fashioned way, people I hadn't spoken to in years, like 15 years. But I knew them because there was at one point, our kids were really little or something, I just lost track of them. A lot of times, the first initial contact was, who is this? Because I'd been dropped out of their contacts. So they didn't know who even was. So it's a little bit like starting at ground zero, but it worked out.
Why don't you read one of the chapters from,
Later.
yeah, from
From,
our
Current day.
neighborhood?
okay. Oh, please, who is that?
Your daughter.
It's somebody from your
Neighbor.
It's the smoke abatement people.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
It's time to take your pills.
Why is it
Well,
stopping? There, I see.
about,
Put it to 3 things for her.
well, this is how it begins.
There.
Hello, neighbor. What's up for the week? Referring to my agenda, I laughed. Wow, how do I squeeze in all this? Nothing. Coffee at Michelle's, off. Fundraiser at the Pasadena Playhouse, off. Doctor's appointment, all X'd out. But today was the day to connect with Brenda. She'd been my across-the-street neighbor for 25 years. We'd finally found a date and arranged to have a late afternoon glass of wine on the front lawn, the way we used to when our kids were little, but now 6 feet apart. When she lived across the street, Brenda wrote copy for our annual homes tour. She would show up at the meetings to hash out traffic issues. Brenda has a big PR career and her lifestyle defines the word busy. So I wanted her perspective on that unseen knack of creating a good neighborhood. This is like old times, she said with a laugh as we settled ourselves into folding chairs on the lawn, and it did feel old-fashioned. Having the time to sit and visit with a neighbor you don't see very often. I poured us each a glass of wine. The first time we met, we were both 6 months pregnant. She with her first, me with my last. Oh my gosh, it's been so long, I said, settling in. Remember the summer of the eclipse? Of course, Gabe was in 8th grade. So was Rosie. Remember how we sat up all night, you and me on those steps? I said, pointing to our front steps. And all the neighbor kids in sleeping bags across the lawn? Brenda said. All of us watching the moon disappear at midnight? We both held the memory of that warm night, of how easily that slumber party sprang to life, of how our kids and those others are all grown up and off, and just how time passes so. I'd asked Brenda to think about my neighborhood ponderings. After you called, she said, I sat down and actually thought about it and even made notes. Brenda cheerfully whipped out a piece of paper from her pocket and read, making where you live a place of value never just happens. You've got to be deliberate. Make a conscious decision that, yes, I will contribute to the spirit of this place. Involve myself. I know, I said, but what if a person's very shy?
Mhm.
She tilted her head as if to say, yeah, but you still have to. I played devil's advocate. Of course, if your house were on fire,
Oh,
anyone
jeez.
would run to the neighbors screaming, call the fire department.
Wow.
But to simply call out, good morning, nice to see you, neighbor, as someone's headed to work can feel, I don't know, a little bit lame. Brenda answered. But it's surprising how little it takes. And at a certain point, we each have to choose. Will I be the type to smile and say hello? And if somebody's moving in, you can't wait and think, oh, I'll get around to welcoming them next week, because we all know that if too much time passes, it's not going to happen.
That's right.
But Brenda, think how busy people are today. We both took sips of wine and then we choked on our laugh. We're so busy. COVID's made everybody so busy. But Mary Lea, there's just no way around it. If you want a good, safe, fun place to live, it has to be you who helps make it that way. And besides, we need each other. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but when you may least expect it. That reminded me of a time years ago when I had an emergency. Something had gotten into my eye, a bug, or a large piece of dirt or something, when I was home alone with my toddler. What was it? It really hurt, and my eye was getting worse and worse by the moment. I called my neighbor 3 doors down, Leslie. She was at home as a working realtor, but she was home, and she was on my porch in 1 minute. Unflinchingly, she got right up close to my eye, opened it, and saw a tiny piece of gravel and got it out. It sounds like such a small thing, but actually, what would I have done? Brenda and I sat underneath our huge ginkgo tree, watching folks pass on the sidewalk, taking their late afternoon walks. I remember one time, Jim and I woke up in the middle of the night to a terrible fist fight happening right on our front lawn, Brenda said. 2 men. He ran out to see what was going on and realized it was the cousin of the young man next door. And he was able to say, guys, quit it. It's late. And they did. So, because we knew them, we were not fearful or angry. We were simply concerned. Wow, that is the way you want to feel, right? I said. Brendan nodded, because if you know your neighbors, you can understand them. And if you can understand them, you can understand the immediate world surrounding you. Isn't that the basis of being comfortable? If you are sick or in an emergency and nobody knows, but how could they? But, well, it's a trade-off, isn't it? I said in a joking way, between having people know your business and having people know your business. Well, I think that's about what I have to say at the moment. And somebody said, who is this intended for? It's intended for all of us. It's a wonderful, affordable gift for a new neighbor, somebody that you want to thank for something, and all of that. So why don't I just make my way back? Yes.
What's the best dish to bring to a neighbor? Is it cookies? Is it lasagna?
There's a whole chapter.
Oh,
Well, it has to be simple because you intimidate people because they know they can't reciprocate.
Yeah.
Or they don't feel like they can resist. So it's, if you can keep it simple, keep it like, oh, it's nothing, you're in better territory. Yeah.
Good point.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what do you say to somebody who's gone through what your neighbor has gone through?
Well, like AI said, I don't have any words for that, except I think honestly you have, just being present to one another. Somebody said, how do you become a good neighbor? Well, you have to decide, or how do you promote community in your neighborhood? Let's say you live in a pretty quiet place, people are into their own worlds and so forth. And to me, what I say is, first of all, you have to decide that's what you want to do. You want to make your place a place that has that web of help around you. And then you have to decide to be present. You don't have to do much. You just have to be on the sidewalk, taking your walk. You have to be, if you're out on the outside, and you have to be willing just to say hello. I mean, that's it. It all starts there. So,
Beautiful.
yeah.
All right.
okay.
Right.